Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of 17 and some change. I'm your host, AccuDes17, and I'm going to be giving my 2 cents. Um, Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Uh, I hope that y'all have been having a good week and let's get into it. Um, Yesterday was my birthday, and birthdays are an interesting time um, because there's a lot of differences in uh, beliefs and excitement levels surrounding birthdays, depending on your age and your your group. Um, you typically, when you're younger, you're more excited about your birthday, um, unless you don't have like parties and friends and stuff like that. And then as you get older, you're typically less excited about your birthday unless you do have like parties and friends and stuff like that. Um, it's some people, claim to not care and stuff like that. No matter who you are, birthdays have this way of making you reflect, um, even if it's just briefly. Um, they make you reflect on where you are in life and um, who's who's with you by your side and stuff like that. Um, it, 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 it makes you um, reflect on your past and your future. Um, a lot of times it could be a time of recalibration for some and recommitment for others and stuff like that. Um, and some years it's more so than others. Some milestones more so than others. I know when people hit 40, that's typically something that they spend a little bit of time thinking about and stuff like that, for example. And birthdays are, and even for ourselves, you wonder like how many more you're gonna have. And for others, when it's somebody else's birthday, you can, you know depending on the age and stuff, you can wonder the same thing and stuff like that. And it's good to try to make it a celebration about surviving so many years. Like, yo, I made it to my X and X birthday. Like, I survived 10 years, I survived 20 years, I survived 30 years, etc., etc. It should be like celebrating that fact and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, there's a lot that go into birthdays and stuff. Um, so so when I do a day in history later on in this segment, I'm gonna do for yesterday. Um, just because, yeah, I want to see what happened for my birthday day. I don't know when that's gonna get a chance to do that again. I mean, I could just Google it anytime and stuff like that. And But I'll probably do. I might do. Nah, I'll stick to the 15th, and then I'll just check that out as well. So I'll say both of them type shit. Um, Another thing I wanted to talk about uh today was um trying to figure out the order here, but um you guys notice when you're scrolling through the internet, um like Facebooks and YouTubes and Instagrams and stuff like that, uh especially now since Sora 2 has released, like they y'all notice the absolute amount of what we're referring to now as AI slop. Um, just like they're very prevalent. They're extremely prevalent. I don't have like a percentage on them or anything like that, but they keep popping up, and it's a lot of videos. So they're so prevalent that they're making you stop and second guess on real videos. You're like having to take a second to check even on real videos. Some of the AI ones they jump out instantaneously as BS, but what's more concerning, eh, the fact that these videos are permeating like wildfire throughout the internet is concerning in it of itself. But what is more concerning is the reaction, the comments are one of are either one of two things. Like most of the comments seem to be um believing the videos that they're watching, and this is either really really gullible, a representation of really super gullible and naive people in our society, or they're bots. And either way, that's concerning, because if it's a representation of how um, naive our society is, um, given it's not always um the it's not always the brightest people that are commenting on um, AI slop, but to have those comments is an indication that of how gullible certain people can be, and or we have an internet that is, teeming with with bots, with AI bots, and neither one of them is necessarily like a good prognosis, so to speak. Um, so I as far as AI goes, I starting to lean towards the idea that we're going to be hitting a glass ceiling, that we're gonna see a bubble burst, that We're dealing with something that's potentially overhyped. I don't, at this rate, from what I've seen, and I'm somebody who's used AI very heavily over the past couple years or so. Um, Actually, since it's been available, I've always been um, interested in testing it and using it since really, as far back as in its lifetime as I could think. But I'm really starting to doubt its ability to um, maintain, to garner, then maintain any sort of semblance of human likeness. It seems like it's a calculator for data and images. It's like LLMs are simply prediction models, and there's this thing, garbage in, garbage out. Um, they seem to, as a user, and there's a very quiet under rumbling of this phenomena on the internet, but as a user, like the capabilities seem to be diminishing. um you know the, you have Sora 2 with all these like slop videos on the internet and stuff like that, and that's not much better than VO3 or anything like that. But um I think we're starting to see a reduce on return. um and I think the hype train might slow down um sooner sooner rather than later. The hallucination rate is still way too high. There's also a theory too that um the publicly available LLMs are simply, at this point, not at their origin, but at this point, are just data mining, softwares where you're not getting the output that it's that AI is fully capable of giving. And that potential, those capabilities are kept by AI, by OpenAI, and by Google and stuff like that. Um, and we get like the dumbed down version and stuff like that. And I don't know if that's the case. I think everybody wants to have this sci-fi vision of like this unstoppable super AI that's like self-aware and self-conscious, and it's just like, I think that's fascinating for our species in general, but like, you have to, like, I talk about God sometimes and stuff like that, and I consider myself a believer in God. And at some point, like you have to realize that if you are a believer in God, you're not you can't expect consciousness to arise out of a robot. If you really do believe in God and stuff like that. And then if it does, you have to assume that it's something nefarious because it's not natural. You have to assume it's some sort of Tower of Babel type shit. But um but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Like the game is still being played, the verdict is still not out, and we'll see what happens. I run into all these thumbnails like, look, I know AI is taking jobs, but it's not as prevalent as the internet would make it seem, as the hype bubble would make it seem. Um, you scroll through and there, oh, no more jobs left in 24 months. Like this is it. There's a lot of apocalyptic predictions surrounding AI on the internet. And I'm here to say that I believe that in 7 years from now, we're not going to be able to, it's not going to be that much different than where we are today as far as AI. People, um, people were talking about like graphics on video games and how, um, you know, I mean, before Genesis, I mean, back in Atari and stuff like that, Atari, Nintendo, the original with the two buttons, and then Genesis, Sega, and Dreamcast, and then the PS1, and then the PS2, like, and then you had like graphics were improving like drastically, and they're still improving drastically, but like they haven't and they never will get to like, let me put it this way, there was uh at least a decade where graphics didn't improve. Let me put it that way, right? And we're kind of getting back to like, all right, we're getting larger um computers, and like we're getting back to getting better graphics and stuff like that. And the PS5 is really really good. Is better than the 360, for example. Um, but with AI, that's that with graphics you can argue that it's a computing issue, and with AI, that theory doesn't seem to hold true. Where like the more power, the more memory, the more data, the better the imitation of human is. And well, firstly, that's all it is imitation of human. But secondly, that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like AI has consumed all the data, and now a lot of the data that it's getting in is data that itself has created. So there's this idea of AI eating itself, where it's producing the very data that it's training itself on, and it's just deteriorating because of it. It's like a self incest, and it's killing itself. And every time, like you'll see it, like if you take like there are some softwares that try to maintain, like their selling point is trying to maintain consistency of character models, and you have to do some like uh good prompting for anything resembling that to happen. And there's still mistakes and stuff like that. But you'll see on like a standard open AI, if you tell it to create an image of, let's say you give it an image of a person, um with some shit in the background, whatever's in the background, and then you tell it to recreate for you the exact same image. It's gonna vary slightly, and then if you tell it to do the same again and again and again and again, it becomes like a game of telephone where, like, after 100 times of it creating the exact same image, you're looking at like a fucking demon on the screen. You're looking at like a fucking, like just this unrecognizable, like, vomit of like some weird shit that claims to be a picture, and something that's just completely unrecognizable from the first input that you gave, and and that's that, you know. um so I think we're gonna be fine. They're saying, and these are the hidden shit. This isn't, if you look up AI, artificial intelligence, or state of artificial intelligence, or AI and the future. If you look up anything like this, you're gonna get the mega prolific outlook of AI becoming a god, so to speak. But and how AI agents are taking over the world and stuff like that. Um, and I know I am concerned about how many AI bots are on YouTube. But if you search specifically for the negative side, for the counter side, you will find plenty of reports um, highlighting how the companies that are using AI, are utilizing AI, are, are not making more money. They're losing money, and a lot of times corporations are finding themselves having to have hire humans to fix um, AI mistakes, and it's costly and stuff like that. And so, like I said, we'll see how it unfolds, but I don't see it being much greater. I think it's gonna plateau for like the next decade. I think where we are today as far as AI, they usually say, oh, lawmakers take so long that technology like laps the law. Um, and I think, and they said it was especially true in the case of AI, because AI is going to have exponential gains. But now I think AI isn't going to take any real significant leaps. I think it's going to look almost the same as it does now in 10 years, and it's going to give legislation plenty of time to catch up on it. And that's just my prediction as of today. I don't know. Maybe tomorrow they come out and they show me something they haven't showed me yet. But um, based on like where we are today with AI and stuff like that, that's kind of my prediction. So um so I there's a local store. I go to a local store, and there's a female there who is nice. She's pleasant. She seems like like a like a like a nice person. Like a genuine, compassionate human being that has like a capacity for empathy and stuff like that. And she typically seems really sad. Like she has like this kind of like heaviness on her. Like she's like life is kind of been handing her some hooks and uppercuts and stuff like that. And you know, and there's a dog there, and the dog has like a similar demeanor. Really friendly dog, you know, but just seems kind of saddish. Seems kind of saddish. Um, and I went in, and now I've been in there quite a few times, and I've ran into the owners, and they're just I think they're I think they're the parents of I think I think they're the parents, and they're miserable like they're so mean. Like they're miserable people, like, and not just like there's a difference. Like miserable doesn't mean just like being sad. Being sad, like having like this sad energy about you isn't the same as being a miserable person. Like these people are like the dog the dog sees it. The dog's like mad tense around them. They don't like they scold the dog for like showing any sort of like, like will to play or like will to live. Like if the dog's doing anything other than just like sitting there and like doing nothing, like they're upset with it. Like, get back here, drop back, 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 and like I don't know, I could it frustrates me to see like other people's misery like rub off on like the authentic people and animals of the world. Right? The innocent people are always the ones that fucking get stuck with these fucking miserable shits. And they don't deserve it. The miserable shits do not deserve the authentic, um, empathy having individuals and animals in their lives. They just don't. They're mean people. They're mean, miserable people. Um, I watched with my face the other day. I watched because I didn't know. I almost didn't watch it. So it's Halloweenish season. So I don't really do horror movies that much anymore. I used to like horror movies a lot when I was a kid, especially slashers. I thought they doubled as hero movies. I've talked about this in the past, and I've done episodes on like different horror people and stuff like that. Um, but at this point in my life, I try to I don't know. I guess I've seen enough people dying on screen and shit like that. Like I try to like um put my mind with like good shit, when like movies and stuff like that. I don't know. I think I've slowed down on watching horror movies. Let's put it that way. I don't enjoy them the same way I did in the past, especially the ones that are like really emphasizing it. Like I don't know, like they just kind of they lost their appeal. Like Um, so so this will be the second horror movie. So like when I watch a horror movie now, like it has to have a lot of redeeming qualities outside of like the murder, kill, fucking scare you part of it. You know what I mean? Like it has to have a lot of like feel good shit, or it has to be like a concept that kind of supersedes the killing. Like Megan was a concept about smart AI, and that philosophical concept kind of superseded to me the the murder kill. And so I found this one too, and I think it did the same thing. It was called Krampus, and I almost wanted to like save it for like the Christmas season, but I watched during the Halloween season. I guess Krampus was like the antithesis to Santa Claus. I guess he's a old mythical um demon of sorts, and so he comes for to steal and shit like that. And this movie made it he came for those that were unappreciative, and I thought that was pretty cool. It was philosophically ripe ripe. It had some good philosophical frameworks to work with. Um, I'm gonna kind of go over some of the things that I thought about during the watching of the film, and there's gonna be a lot of spoilers. I don't know if you haven't watched the film. I'm literally gonna say like all the things that happened. Like I'm going to give away the ending. So, um, which is if you're trying to watch the movie and you haven't seen it, like don't listen and stuff like that. Um, but so spoilers included, but the movie came out in 2015. And I'm telling you, it's a really good movie, and you should check it out if you want before this review or whatever. It's an older movie. It's a good movie. Um, the opening scene was pretty cool. It showed a compilation of um, store goers fighting with one another. And like first they're like rushing to like get the products, and then they're like fighting with like jumping over each other, and then they're like fighting each other. Um, he shows like basically in slow mo. It's showing like the mad dash for Christmas, for holiday buying and stuff like that. Um, in the meantime, it's playing some cozy, like some nice Christmas music, like some classical Christmas music that's supposed to like invoke like feelings of like warmth and inclusion and stuff like that. While the main time it's showing the chaos and vitriol and cash exchange that's happening within the department stores. So it immediately sets the tone of irony um, for the thing. Um, I thought there were a lot of archetypes in the movie, which I'll probably I have um like the dad was an archetypical like good guy. Um, the grandmother was the archetypical been through a lot of shit but still remains like good. Um, seen a lot of shit. She was like the archetypical like storyteller, like the one that has insight onto why the bad stuff is happening. Um, the guru. Um, the uncle. One of the uncles was the archetypical like um. I want to say I don't want to say like Republican or whatever. Um, but they portrayed him as like this in ego, high ego, low agreeability, um, uh, guy with weapons and trucks. I mean, one of the first scene of to illustrate how like obnoxious, he's supposed to be obnoxious as well. Like this family comes, the first scene where we're introduced to him, his truck is shaking the house. And then he's ringing the doorbell a dozen times. And we see his kid, who is an absolute moron. And no offense, I mean, this is a movie character. They made this kid, they made him to be stupid. Like, there's nothing there. Like, and he does a good job playing it. You know what I mean? The actor does a good job playing it. Um, like nothing there. Like they try that, like they'll talk to him, he won't even like say anything. And then there's a scene where a freaking giant gingerbread cookie gets dangled down from a chimney at in the middle of the night, in the most menacing way possible. And this kid's just hungry, and because he's chubby and shit too, and he's just hungry, and he just goes and eats the cookie. So that is an archetypical stupid kid, you know. There's a lady, I don't know who she is. I gotta find out though, because it's worth mentioning. Um, it's definitely worth mentioning. I thought it was Roseanne at first, um, but it's not Roseanne. She's really popular. I think she played Dan's mom, maybe in one of the sitcoms. So I just want to look up the cast here because again, I think she's worth mentioning. What? Conchetta Ferrell is her name? What? Oh, she played. That's how I know her. Okay. Oh, she's dead. She died in 2020. That sucks. Um. Oh wow, she looked a lot different when she was young. Like really young, I mean. Well, kind of, not in that picture. That picture she looks the same exact thing. But I guess it's that. Wow, she lived 80 years almost. 77 years. She saw a lot. So, but yeah, I guess where I know her from was she played Berta, the housekeeper on Two and a Half Men. Um, and she keeps the same energy. Like if anybody knows Berta, the housekeeper from Two and a Half Men, she keeps the same energy in this movie, and that's pretty cool. Like literally, like pretty much the same effing energy. Like she brought like the same character into the movie, and that was pretty cool. Um, Anybody who watched Two and a Half Men a lot will have some nostalgia there. Be like a built-in known character and stuff like that. Um, it's interesting. They were talking about Santa Claus and how to believe in him is actually nothing about him. More so, believing in the spirit of giving and the spirit of sacrifice. They highlighted that, and I thought that was pretty cool. Um, because they didn't just highlight it in the beginning of the movie; they highlighted it toward the end, reiterating how Christmas is supposed to be, you know, a sacrifice of giving, and and that's exactly what Christ did, and it's no small wonder that we use Christmas as a representation of Christ's birthday. We use a holiday that represents sacrifice and giving as the symbolic birthday of a character who represents the ultimate sacrifice. And then we have a Santa Claus, Saint Nicholas, who is an extension of that. So all around, you know, the the movie tries to indicate that um Krampus being the shadow of Saint Nicholas, a representation, if you will, of Satan. All throughout the movie, it tries to illustrate how um these 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 negative behavioral or these negative thoughts and behaviors are in the spirit of evil, and how um, you know cooperation and family and giving and sacrifice is in the spirit of good. Um, so I like how it really illustrates that in a story type of way. Um, I thought it was funny that the kid is one of the main characters, if not the main character, is a young boy. His name is Max. I thought it was funny when they called him Maxi Pad. I wouldn't have thought of that as a gripe. Uh, and it was his decision to rip the letter that he wrote to Santa Claus that set off Krampus's that allowed Krampus to do the evilness. It was the moment that he lost faith, um, that invited the evil in, and that's why this is a good movie. To show that it's so true. It's so true. The As soon as we lose hope, as soon as we lose faith, that's when the nihilism kicks in, and that's where the evil is. And that's when we start doing bad things to ourselves, to others, to society. That's when we start, it's when that hope and that faith goes away. And that's a great illustration there. You let the devil in, by dropping faith. You know, um, I like the tone shift. And it was there was a tone shift to a point where the storm just got like really crazy, and they had a freaking snowman that would like move. Like when nobody was looking, like every time you saw it, it was like in a different position and shit. They use like this bluish hue to represent to emphasize the coldness. Um, and they didn't just shift the tone, but they didn't just do a good job shifting the tone from like friendly and happy and stuff like that to eerie. They did a good job switching back and forth because they would go back and forth in tone. And I think they did a great job doing that. Um, there was a point in the movie where somebody was screaming out, "Help me!" And I don't know who was doing that voice, but that was like the most realistic "Help me" that I've ever heard screamed in a horror movie. Um, there was plenty of gunplay. You know, if you're somebody who likes a horror movie where like there's guns, where like the good guys actually have guns, they actually have like weapons to fight. Um, there's a lot of gunplay between like there's a shotgun and then there's a revolver, and they get used, um, and they have an impact. They're not just like, oh, your guns do nothing. It's like, nah, the guns actually have an impact. And that's always something that I like to see in a horror movie is um the ability to fight back and to have an impact when you're fighting back. And this movie allows that to happen. It allows the characters a fighting chance, and I always like to see that. It had really good foreshadowing. Um, I already talked about how the mom was like that archetypical wise woman, but I wrote down here she was like that archetypical wise woman that's been through a lot and shows signs of PTSD, where she'll just like stare out into like the distance and shit like that. Um, there was um there was some kind of scary stuff. Like there was some kind of scary moments in a suspenseful kind of way. Like they did suspense well, you know. They um they did suspense in they took a cheesy concept and put suspense in it in a non cheesy way. Like they did a good job of using terror and suspense to offset the silliness. I say silliness because it wasn't just Krampus. There were a lot of like monsters. Um, there were a lot of monsters, and they could have been, laughed at and deemed really silly if they didn't do such a good job with like the tone and stuff like that. Um, and the music and the timing and stuff like that. But yeah, it was cute. Like there was like the gingerbread cookie monsters. That was pretty cool. Um and then there's like a small handful of monsters that were there that was pretty cool. Um it offered comedic relief at times through the suspense and stuff like that. Um I don't know who watches pro wrestling, but there were multiple false finishes. There were multiple times where I thought the movie would be over, but it wasn't. There was still more to be had. Um, there was a kick out, so to speak. But it wasn't just like false finishes because the monster kept coming back to life. Like there was multiple false finishes for various reasons. Um I like there was a scene where the grandma came face to face with Krampus, and I felt like it was an illustration of a spiritual battle. Um, the Krampus wasn't able to affect by using intimidation. Um, and he tried, and she stayed stoic, not budging in the face of intimidation. He tried to like touch her on the face and stuff like that, and she wouldn't budge. But then, um, so she passed the fear test that evil entities will try the intimidation, but then she failed, um, because he opened up his bag of tricks. You know, I've talked about in the past how narcs have bags of tricks, and evil people have bags of tricks, and it showed like he literally had a bag of tricks, and like a bag of shit that he opened for her to look in, and when she looked into the bag, um, a bunch of little jack in the boxes uh, implied to kill her. So, you know, you pass the fear test, but you failed by, falling for the bag of tricks. Um, and then there were some surprising deaths. And then there were, um, multiple adult sacrifices at the end, for the kids to be safe. Um, Krampus gave the main character back uh, the letter that he had ripped up, the one that was supposed to go to Santa that was ripped up. Krampus gave it back to the kid as a reminder of what happens, um, when you lose faith and stuff like that. You know, and you know, it gets to a point where towards the end where the whole family is dead, and it's just this little kid. And I started thinking to myself, like, that's how the movie was gonna end. And I'm like, oh wait, did I just watch a movie where like this is that like the end of the movie? Like this kid just lost his entire family, like his parents, his uncles, his aunts, his grandparents, his brothers, his sisters. Like, is that really what I just watched? Like, is that what just happened? And I said to myself, that better be like a effing dream or something. And sure enough, fade to black, um, and it comes back, and it is a dream. It did happen to be a dream of sorts. Um, he gets another chance with his family, and um, it shows a scene in the living room where like people drinking hot chocolate and opening gifts and like bantering with each other and stuff like that. And the and of course the kid is appreciative of it, right? Because he just saw all of them die, and now they're all back alive, and he's appreciating all of them, and he's enjoying the moment. But the tone of the moment on screen seemed lighthearted and uplifting and uh cohesive, like there was camaraderie and happy, right? And because the music was good, because the music was, um, pushing the audience in that direction, and the lighting and the pacing, right? And whereas in the beginning, the opening scene with the family, um it was different. And but it was the opposite. It was the opposite. And I'm wondering if the only thing that changed was the kid's perception. Well, it's obvious that the only thing that changed was the kid's perception, but what it looks like to me is that the movie illustrates that by changing your perception only through music, tone, and pacing. So I would argue that the behavior of the characters was no different in the ending scene as it was in the beginning scene, but the movie made the characters dislikable versus likable simply by using uh, tricks that would change a point of view, right? It's not the behavior of these people that change. It's not the facial expressions. It was just the interpretation, the lens that the movie allowed the audience to see them through. And that's very symbolic of real life sometimes too. You know, I've said it before, and sometimes I'll ask, like I've asked like my coworker, like, is everybody in a shitty mood today, or am I? You know, because sometimes what you give is what you get, or how you see whatever color glasses you're wearing is what you see the world through sometimes. And so let's go. Let's do let's do this day in history real quick. First, I'm gonna do October 14th, day in history. Just out of curiosity, the Battle of Hastings in 1066. All right, that sounds cool. But so let's actually, so we'll do today. We'll do today's day in history. This is the one that the official one for the week. Beep, beep. I think this is better than a daily horoscope. Um, See, that's silly because like there's a lot of them. There's multiple, and like per century too. And so you got the first public use of ether, the premiere of Love Lucy, the formation of the Black Panther Party, and Wayne Gretzky breaking the NHL all-time points record. And these are all in different years. The first successful combat submarine, Thomas Edison's electric light company begins operation. The Supreme Court rules part of the Civil Rights Act of 1875 unconstitutional. Yeah, so I don't know if I think there might be, cuz it's not like every day is like so I guess some days there are going to be events that don't necessarily stick out above others, and that's unfortunate or maybe fortunate. I guess if there was a major super duper catastrophe that stuck out above the rest for every single day, I guess if every day had its own 9/11, would be a very effing traumatized species. So I guess it's good that some days are just like, oh, Wayne Gretzky broke the NHL record and somebody used Esther for the first time. I guess that's good. So nothing really sticks out on October 15th to me. Um, you know, and but yeah, so I that's I guess that's good that nothing too crazy happened or whatever. So um yeah, I that takes us to an hour. An hour is pretty good. An hour is pretty solid. An hour is always a good chunk of time to gauge things by. I'm gonna go do some stuff and things like that. And I hope you guys do good stuff. Um, have a good week. Um, don't do anything I wouldn't do. And yeah, until next time. Goodbye.